Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this little workshop on how to draw a Springer Spaniel with the Derwent Drawing Pencils. So if you don't know me, my name is Jess Pritchard. I am a wildlife conservation artist and I have been a Derwent ambassador for a good few years now. Absolutely love their products, obviously. And I'm very excited tonight to be teaching you how to draw your very own Springer Spaniel. So we've got quite a bit to get covered tonight, so I'm going to dive straight in. So I'm just going to change the camera. You can see what I'm going to be drawing and follow along. So I just shuffle over. So as you can see, I have got my Springer Spaniel outline already laid out on the paper, ready to go. Now, my pencils I'll be using are all along this edge here. They will not remain that neat for the course of the evening probably. And we have got a few accessories. So I will be using the Derwent pencil eraser. We've got the Derwent battery eraser and two of my favourite sharpeners, which have been very well used, the Derwent twin hole sharpener and the Derwent super point sharpener, which gets incredibly sharp points to all your pencils. It's very, very well used, that one, and quite old now. So to begin with, we are going to be starting with the eye of the spaniel here. Now, when it comes to eyes, it's very important to build up those layers, beginning with a lighter layer and working your way darker around the edges and in the middle. So to start with, I'm going to be grabbing my Derwent pencil eraser and I just lightly go over my outlines. So I'm knocking them back a little bit, but not erasing them completely, just so that they don't show through when I put the pigment of the coloured pencils down, and then I can just brush away any excess rubbings there. Now to start with, I put down a nice base colour. So if you have your reference to hand, you'll see that the eye of the spaniel is quite yellowy around the outer edge and a bit more greeny in the centre. So when it comes to any more yellowy tones or brown tones, my go-to base colour is always the champagne. So you can see it's well used compared to one that isn't as well used. So it's obviously a lot shorter. I get through a lot of these pencils. So to begin with, we have this outer yellow area and then that inner greener area. So I'm just going to fill in that outer yellowy area with the champagne. So it's a very light colour, and I'm doing this using circular motions like this. So I'm not going backwards and forwards creating lines. By creating circular motions, it lends itself to the blendability of these pencils and gives a nice smooth lay down, so you can blend all those other tones on top seamlessly without it looking choppy. So just putting that base colour down and overlapping slightly into where the centre green area is. Now, as I mentioned, around the outer edge of the eye, it is much darker than this sort of mid area. So we're going to start building up some more of those colour tones and giving the eye a bit of a brighter feel to it. So to do this, I'll be grabbing a yellow ochre, which is a nice sort of muted yellow colour, and I'm just with light pressure going to go over that champagne I've put down, because once I put the champagne down, it then stops the white of that paper showing through so much. So the paper we're using this evening is the Derwent Light Fast paper as well, as that takes a lot of layers and is lovely to use with these pencils. So by putting this yellow ochre down, it just brings out a little bit more colour to that base champagne, which has blocked some of that white coming through. And then to brighten it even further, because we want it to have a nice yellow hue to it, we'll be using the sunflower. Now, this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch this, because I know we might be going a little bit quickly this evening just because of the time and how much I want to cover with you all. So if you can't quite keep up, don't panic too much, don't worry, it's absolutely fine. You can go back later on and watch this recording. So With the sunflower again, I'm just holding my pencil halfway down. I'm not holding it here, so I never ever hold my pencil right at the tip. Hold it about halfway down because that gives you a nice movement then to do these circular motions. And just by putting down a bit of the sunflower very lightly, it just gives that slight yellow tint to that eye. So
Jess, can I just interrupt you a minute? There's a couple of people who were saying they didn't get the reference photo. So obviously for those people, they can get them emailed out tomorrow, and then obviously anything they learn tonight from yourself, they can use afterwards. So just for everybody on the call that said they didn't get the reference photo, they can get an email tomorrow with that. Hopefully that helps everybody.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, if you didn't get the reference photo, it's fine. You can just follow along as I draw it. And yep. So now we're going to be putting down that darker edging to the eye, which I mentioned. So I'm going to start getting those darker tones, but they're slightly more orangey. So if you don't have the reference photo, again, it's fine. You'll receive it tomorrow and you can watch this back if need be. But I'll be telling you all the colours now anyway, so you can follow along. So the apricot we're going to be using because it's a nice light orange. It's not going too dark too quickly. And it's nice to go lighter to begin with because then it's easier to erase with your battery eraser, for example, if you need to. So the darker you go, obviously, the harder it is to then erase the colours that you're putting down. So with the apricot, I'm just going to, again, holding my pencil about a third of the way down, but again, never right at the tip. So down here a little bit and just in circular motions, I'm just going along that edge of the eyeball. So again, by doing it circular motions quite lightly, it means it's blending into those colours that we've already put down, but just along that edge. So it's not looking like a harsh line against that yellow. And that just starts to bring out the shape of that part of the eye. So we've got that apricot down. And then we're going to go for a slightly darker orangey tone. So we'll be going for the sanguine. And again, just doing exactly the same thing, just working your way along that edge, just in circular motions, nice and lightly to begin with, and then you can start to add more pressure if needed. So that is pretty much all you need for that outside part of the eye for now. So we'll be working our way into the center of the eye with the green. So we'll be using olive earth because it's a nice muted green. It's not really bright because we don't want a really bright green in that eye. It just needs to be a nice natural green. So I'm going to just make a circular motion around that pupil because we don't want to fill that in. And again, I'm just going to lightly work in small circles, still holding my pencil halfway down, and just bringing it out into that yellowy area. And as you come out into that yellowy area, just lift off the pressure and it will blend out really nicely into those yellowy tones. So we want to keep that yellow there, but just overlap very slightly and working your way around any highlighted areas because we want to keep those nice and white. And it's really important to have nice highlighted areas in an eye because that is what brings soul to an eye, is those lovely highlights. And you can just bring the pencil around those highlights slightly like that, and then go back in and just with a little bit more pressure just work it around that pupil a little bit more just to darken that area around the pupil. And then for the easy fun little part, you can grab an ivory black and just fill in a dot of the pupil there. And that eye is now starting to come together, starting to come to life a little bit. So now we want to really add like a dark outline around that eye to define it. So keeping hold of your ivory black, and you might need to sharpen it for this part, but they don't get too sharp because they're nice and soft and creamy, but that you can still get nice lines with them. And you just work your way lightly around that eyeball like this, and then around the top, and that just starts to define that shape and those highlights. And then you might find once you've got that darker line in, you want to darken up around the outer edges of the eyeball to give it a little bit more of a 3D look. And if you want to do this, you can use a dark brown, and just again going over where you put that sanguine down, just in very light small circles. Just try and get that to focus a bit more. It's gone out of focus a little bit. There we go. Sorted. There we go. And then just go in slight circles and just darken that edge very slightly. And if you want to, you can do this a little bit around the pupil as well, just to give a bit of a darker look to it, like that. And then all that's left to do in the highlights is add a little bit of blue, because in the reference photo I can see there's a bit of sky reflected. So using the nice polar ice blue colour, it's very sky blue. We don't want to completely fill these highlights with blue because it will look too flat then. So you can just add hints of this blue here and there, just to make it look like there's some clouds in the eye reflection, and it'll just look like this. It'll focus. There we go. So then you've got your nice eyeball there, and you might find that you want to add a little bit more definition around the highlights. So if you want to do that, you can grab your olive earth again and just go back in and just shade very lightly around those highlights, just to define it a little bit better. So now we'll just go around the eye and then do a little bit of fur around this eye as well, because fur direction and technique is very vital around an eye, and it can be a little bit complicated until you figure out how to do it, and then you realize it is super easy and you don't need to panic about it. So working our way around the rest of the eye to give it a little bit more shape, we'll be using a nice pink. So we'll be using the dusky pink, again a nice sort of light muted pink, which is perfect for this skin that is just around the eye here. So I'm just going to start colouring in that tear duct a little bit with this dusky pink, again holding halfway down and not putting too much pressure, because these pencils put down a lot of pigment because they're so soft and they're just gorgeous to use, to be honest. I use them all the time when doing animals, and I promise I am not just saying that, I actually do. So I'm just going to work my way around that bottom eyelid and then work around this side of the eye here. So just over here is going to be some fur, but we can overlap that fur onto this pink to give it a nice seamless look. So we're just going to, in circles, bring that pink up slightly into this area, just very lightly, and then along the top of this eye here. So we're going to be putting a bit of the darker black colour here, but we're just going to put this pink in to begin with, because once we've put that black in here, if we put the pink over the top, it might smudge into it a little bit. So it's always best to work light to dark for that reason. So just circular motions, just a little bit of the pink, just like that. And now we can go back in with our ivory black, and again, if you need to sharpen it a little bit, you can do, and just add in that tear duct shape there, so just a little triangle shape, and then you can just join it to that line around the eye we put in earlier at the bottom, and again at the top there, and then just do some strokes around the top of that eye, and that will give you the shadow which is above the eyeball but underneath the eyelid. So we've just got a nice thin line there, and then you can release pressure and do the same thing and just bring it out into that pink area nice and lightly, not too much pressure at all. Remember, keep it nice and light to begin with, and then you can go back in and add a little bit more pressure if you need to. So once you've done that, brought it out a little bit more, and then if you need to, you can go back over it with the dusky pink, because you've already got that nice base of dusky pink down, and just overlap into the black slightly, and that just blends those two colours together to make it nice and soft, give a nice soft shadow effect, because you have a really nice opaque lay down of these pencils, so you can use that to your advantage and show other colours underneath, especially when using and drawing shadows. So that is essentially our eye. So now we'll just do a little bit of fur around the eye. So as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to brown fur, I tend to go for a champagne base, that nice creamy colour. And I use the base when doing the fur to help me figure out the fur directions before I go over the top with other colours, because that way it means if I get it slightly wrong, it's just a light colour and it doesn't matter too much because I can correct it with those darker colours over the top. So I'm just going to, again, remove some of those outlines a little bit to make them a little bit lighter with my pencil eraser. Now, if you find you've done your outlines quite dark and it's not coming up much with your pencil eraser, that's where the battery operated eraser comes in handy. Or if you find you've gone over your highlights a little bit too much, again, you can use this and just knock back some of that pigment to the white paper just to bring back your highlights. So when it comes to the eye, I always start at the tear duct here. Now, when you do an eye, the fur around it goes in a bit of a circle. So using the point of my pencil to figure out the direction, from the tear duct, the fur goes out this way, and then almost like the pencil's on a pivot from the pupil, the fur turns in this direction and goes all the way around until you meet this other corner of the eye there, and then starting again from this side and then comes around underneath and pivots and goes to here. So that's all I do with this champagne. So you can either do individual strokes and keep them nice and curved. We don't want straight lines because fur generally isn't straight, it's always curved or slightly wavy. So I'm curving my pencil this way and I'm bringing it all the way around. So you can either do these individual strokes or you can keep your pencil on the paper at all times. It's up to you. So you can either stroke and lift or just keep going with your pencil on the paper, and you can put quite a bit of pressure down here because we're just getting rid of some of that white. So I'm just going to go around the eye and this little bit up here where the light is catching the fur. And then I'm going to bring the pencil around here and just completely covering in that champagne colour. So that's our nice base colour down, and then we can start building up some of those darker colours. So as the fur is brown, we're going to be using some brown, but there is also a hint of orange in the fur, as there tends to be a little bit in brown fur. But the reference photo also has a bit of sunlight hitting the dog as well. So we'll be putting in a little bit of orange to give a little bit of a glow to some of that fur. So I'll be using the apricot, that nice light orange colour, and it's quite a strong colour, so I'm only going to be using it with very light pressure, and I'm just going to start doing a few flicks in the direction that I put my base colour down in of the champagne, and I'm just going to bring it all the way around, and you can overlap it onto that pink slightly as well. Just fill in that whole area and then bring it like that and down below that eye. Just like that, and just meeting this other corner nice and lightly. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of it up at the top of this lighter area here, because this section here is where some sunlight is hitting the eye, so we want some of that orange to be visible there. So it's looking a bit like a very orangey dog right now, so we're going to start adding in those brown tones to start darkening it up a little bit. So to begin with, I'll be using a warm earth, so I'm going to gradually get darker with my colours. So with the warm earth, because it's a lighter brown, I'm just going to go over the whole thing except for this lighter patch here. And again, just doing the same thing as I did with the apricot, overlapping onto that pink slightly, bringing it all the way around. Now, if you need to, you can obviously turn your paper around as well if that makes it easier for you. And this just gives those nice sort of base orangey brown colours to then work over the top of with our darker browns. Like that. So the next brown we'll be using is the woodland. So this is where you got to start to keep note of where the fur looks lighter and darker. And the best way to do this is to squint your eyes at your reference, because that removes all the detail and it just allows you to see the tones that are being used. So with the woodland, I'm going to start popping it down where the reference photo looks a bit darker. Now I'm going to keep following those nice curved strokes I've been doing, but we don't want a harsh edge to any of these shadows, so keep your strokes all at different lengths and just start them all in slightly different places so it's not a straight line. And just start to put down that pigment. Again, you can do it quite lightly, there is no need to go too hard with this. And the good thing about these pencils is they've got a nice thick barrel to them as well, so you can get some really good coverage with these, so you don't have to worry too much about fine fur strokes, because you'll be able to cover quite a big area and make it look nice and soft with these pencils. So again, just keep checking your reference, and if you don't have your reference to hand, you can just copy where I'm putting the darker tones down. I'm just going to work my way around. Again, nice soft edging to all these darker areas. You can overlap into that pink slightly as well where needed, especially around the bottom of the eye, just where that bottom eyelid is there. Now again, don't worry too much if you're struggling with this, because we can go back and look at it later on. So that fur is starting to build up, as you can see, starting to get those darker tones. So again, next dark colour we'll be going for is the chocolate. And I'm just going to again go over those darker areas with this chocolate, but I might not want to completely cover that darker area, because there might be some slightly even darker tones to these darker patches. So again, just keep squinting your eyes and just checking to see where there are the light, the dark, and those mid-tones. and just do lots and lots of nice strokes, and you'll see that it all starts to blend together really nicely and gives that nice soft fur effect. And then you can keep those nice highlighted areas around that eye with those other base layers that we put down earlier. It's all about figuring out of where to keep your base layers showing through, so usually where it's slightly lighter, and then build up to make it slightly darker as you put those layers down. And I might just add a little bit at the top of this lighter section here, like that, because this will then, when you come to do this, go into some more darker fur here, and that will leave this area nice and light as if the sun is catching it. And then finally, if you want to make it even darker, I'll be using the darker brown, the dark brown even, and just going in, just add a little bit more depth like this, just in some areas. We don't want to completely overwhelm the picture and make it all look totally dark, but just where it might be needed, just that little bit of an extra kick of pigment. And essentially that will be your eye. So at the moment it's all like a bit of a fan, but as you come down here and work your way down here with the fur, it will then start to smooth out and go in one direction. But if you remember your pivot when you come to do eyes, then that will give you the direction of the fur that goes around it. So that is our eye. So now I'm going to show you how to draw white fur on white paper. So we're going to jump around a little bit just so you've got different techniques so that you can continue with this yourself and do the whole image, because we have got limited time tonight, so we won't be able to complete the whole thing, unfortunately. So with the white fur, white is never actually white. So I'm just going to remove some of my outlines again a little bit with the pencil eraser, and I might just use my battery eraser as well, because as we're going to be drawing white fur, we don't want these showing through very much at all. I'm just going to brush that away with the brush there. Now, as a general rule of thumb, you'll find that white fur, when it's facing upwards towards the sky, it's more of a cold colour, and if it's facing down towards the ground, it's more of a warm. And that is because as it's facing up, it's reflecting tones from the sky, and when it's facing down, it's reflecting tones from the earth. The only time this wouldn't be the case is if there are trees above your subject, which will be reflecting warm light down, or a body of water below your subject, which will be reflecting colder light upwards. But in this case, we'll be putting in some colder grey tones on the white fur here because it's reflecting that sky. So, and this is the reason as well why you have warm and cold greys in your set for times like this. So for doing the white fur, we'll be using the platinum to begin with. So I'll keep holding this up close to the camera because it's quite light, so it might be more difficult to see. But I'm just going to again keep paying attention to the direction of fur on my reference photo and keeping it nice and curved. So with the platinum, I don't want to completely cover the white area because I want to use the white of that paper and allow it to show through. The platinum is literally just to show the direction of those fur strokes and give a little bit of detail so it doesn't just look a flat white. So just coming up the stripe of the nose here, I'm just going to do some strokes, and I'm going to keep them fairly light and fairly far apart. I'm just going to bring it up to the top of the head there and down to the nose area a little bit like that. So just about see we've got a little bit of that platinum down. Now if you find you put too much down, you can just use your pencil eraser or your battery eraser if needed, and then we can add a little bit more tone to that because as the head sort of curves, it gives a little bit of a shadow in some places. So to make it slightly darker, we'll be using the cool grey, which is that slightly darker tone from the platinum. And again, I'm just going to do the same thing and just put down a few strokes here and there, just to show where there might be a bit of shadow. And you can overlap it slightly into this more brown area we've put down as well if you need to. And then you might find that with the whiter areas, there might be slight bits of brown or like yellow in it if it's reflecting bits of the sun potentially. So all you can do is you grab a bit of sunflower, the sunflower pencil, and just pop a bit of that in if you need to, just to kind of give a little bit of that sun reflection. Or if you want to add a bit of brown, you can use sort of a mid-tone brown. So we'll go for the woodland. And you can just add a few fur strokes here and there, not too many because we don't want to overwhelm the picture and make the white area look too brown. But just by doing this, it just gives that little bit of definition to that whiter area. So looks like this. So that is generally how you do white fur. You don't want to put too much down, but it's always about those greys, whether they're a cold grey or a warm grey, and just put a hint of them down just to show a tiny bit of detail in that fur direction. So now I'm going to jump on to part of the ear to show you a section of the curly fur and how to do that. So we'll be using very similar colours to what we did around the eye here. So again, I'm just going to use my pencil eraser and just rub back some of those outlines, just so they don't show through, and just brush that away. Just like that. And again, because it's brown fur, I'll be starting with the champagne, that nice creamy colour. And I'm going to start working my way down the ear and just going into each section that I've drawn out on this curly ear. And again, you can put a fair bit of pressure down with this because we don't want too much of that white paper showing through. And you can just start by covering some of those bits of fur that are kind of above these darker bits, which will be underneath. So I'm going to start with just a few. You can just keep them nice and curly and wavy. So that is the champagne, and then I'll be going in with the apricot, just like I did over here, but keep looking at your reference photo to check where the fur is showing a little bit more orange or not so much orange, because if it's not showing too much orange, then we don't want to put too much apricot in it because we don't want it to look too orangey. So this is where I'll start putting in some nice sleek fur strokes. So I'm doing sort of nice long strokes with my pencil, and I'm keeping it curved. So as we have a wave of fur here, I'm bringing my pencil around this way, and then as it comes into this curve here, I'm going to start bringing it around that way like this, just to give that nice sort of fur direction there. And just anywhere on the reference where there might be a little bit of orange tone, so I'm just going to put the apricot down. Always paying attention to the direction of those fur strokes and keeping it nice and light, nice and soft, because we're blending this all together. So building up those colours. Now, some of these orangey areas on the ear go slightly darker because they're next to other sections of fur, or they might go underneath or over the top of other parts of the fur that are kind of overlapping each other. So if you want a little bit of a darker orange, I recommend the Mars Orange, which is a very nice colour. So just using our Mars Orange, again, just doing some strokes, again, holding my pencil halfway down. No matter how small it gets, I will still try and hold it halfway down, and do some nice light strokes just where you feel the tones a little bit darker, and look orangey. Now don't panic too much if you go wrong with your fur direction, because again you can just use your eraser and knock it back a layer or two and then go back over the top if you need to. So you might see already that by putting these dark areas down over the top of some of these lighter areas and leaving some of these lighter areas blank, it's starting to look a bit shiny, which is what we want. We want to keep some nice light areas where the fur is catching the light, and then some dark areas where there's a little bit of shadow, and that is what gives the fur its nice shine. So continuing to build up the layers. Again, we'll be going in with the warm earth. So we're just going to cover where we've put the orange down. But if you need to and want to put a bit of definition into those lighter areas, you can lightly go over it with your warm earth and just give some nice curving, sweeping motion to your pencil strokes, just lightly. And then as we come to build up those darker brown tones shortly, these warm earth areas will stay looking nice and light, but it will have that slight brown hue to it. So just like that. And then continuing up the chain of dark colours, we're going in with the woodland next. And just going to add that in where it needs to be a little bit darker. Again, giving some nice long strokes and keeping it nice and soft on the edges so you're not ending with a really harsh line. And again, this really helps you use the pencils to advantage because they can blend really nicely into each other. So just where it needs to be slightly darker. But we need to bear in mind that this is also the top layer of fur. So underneath here is going to be a little bit darker. So we don't want to go too dark because then we're going to be battling against the shadows here and it's all going to look a little bit flat. So that's why we're not going too dark too quickly. So just a little bit here and there, nice and lightly. Just like that. So we've got that definition of that top layer now. So now we can start working underneath a little bit. So as we've got the top layer down, now that we put the champagne down, you're not trying to figure out where one section ends and where another one begins. So it's always important to work in sections when doing these sorts of images, because you can look at the image as a whole and you just get completely overwhelmed with it and you think, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do. It's always best just to section it up, and you can go as small with your sections as you want as well. There's no right or wrong with that. So again, just using my champagne, just going to put down a nice solid base colour, putting down quite a bit of pressure, but still holding my pencil about halfway down. It just gives that nice movement to the pencil then. And you have a great range of colours as well with these pencils for doing fur, which is why I use them so much, because I do a lot of animals. It's my thing that I love to do, so it's perfect for them. So now, before we start building up these other tones, as I mentioned, we want to keep each section slightly separate. So once we start building up the tones in this lighter area we've just put down, you might start to lose this section and you get a little bit lost. So what we'll do first is grabbing our dark brown, find it, there it is, and I'm just going to go along the edges of this section here, just highlight or low lighting it, just like this, just so I know where it is, just like that. So it gives a little bit of definition to it as I build up these other tones underneath. So looking at my reference, it's not quite as orangey underneath, but there's still some hints of it there. So rather than putting the apricot down, which is quite a bright orange, I'll be going straight in with the Mars orange because it's a little bit more muted and not so powerful an orange. which is perfect for areas where there's a hint of orange, but not too much. So with curly fur, it goes off in lots of different directions. And you might look at your reference and think, I need to kind of keep it exactly how it is, but you don't. It's fine. It's just a reference. You're not creating a photorealism piece here, and you won't be showing people your drawing alongside the reference photo. So with the curls, you can use a little bit of artistic license and go whichever way feels natural to you, as long as you keep it in the general direction that the fur is going. So it's not going to stick up that way, for example. So now we've put that Mars orange down, we can start building up those other layers. So as it's slightly darker underneath, we'll be missing the warm earth because that's quite a light brown, so we don't really need to put that one down. So we'll go straight in with our woodland, and you can start just popping that in. Again, nice long strokes. And you'll put this down fairly quickly because of the thickness of the barrel of the pencil. So it gives you those nice, chunky, soft strokes. So it'll look like you can almost stroke your dog afterwards. So now I've got that down there, we'll be using a little bit of sepia red because we've got some orangey tones in the dog's fur. But where it's slightly darker, those orangey tones start to turn a little bit of a reddy colour. So with your sepia red, you can start to pop that in where it might be slightly darker. So not all over, so just like we did at the top here, we left some areas slightly lighter to give a nice bit of a highlight. So just choose your areas where you want it to look a little bit darker, and just add that in, and then you start to see there's a bit of definition between the two. But you might find now that the sections look a little bit too separate from each other. So all you need to do is, using your sepia red, is from this darker line here, you can just flick up into that lighter area. And you can do that in a few sections and places, but just keeping that flick that same direction that the fur on top is going. And you can also just add a few lines here and there in that lighter section, which will make the appearance of the hair, the lighter hair, just splitting very slightly and just showing that dark tone from underneath showing through. And then that will just help bring those two sections together a little bit more, like that. And then grabbing your dark brown, if I can find mine. Wait, and you have so many pencils you can't find them all. So here we go, dark brown, and then we can just go back in with the dark brown and just add a few strokes here and there, and again flicking into that lighter section very slightly, just to give a bit more depth to those darker areas. And you can just go and add a few strokes here and there in your lighter area if you need to, just to create those little splits in the fur, like that. And then if you find that you've got this and you want to do a few wisps of fur here and there, just flicking from that lighter area and overlapping into the darker area, you can just use your Derwent electric eraser or your battery operated eraser and just use it and go across like that, and it just starts to bring in a few light strokes like this, and then you can go back over them with your champagne if you need to, like that. And then if you erase a little bit too much, you can just grab a darker color, so such as your sepia red, and just define it slightly and just thin it out like that. And then as a last little bit on this curly fur here, You can use your Chinese white, because this is a great white for overlaying on top of colours, just to lighten them slightly. And you can just do a few strokes here and there, and that will start to lighten some of those darker areas if you need to. And just add a little bit of a highlight just like that for an example. So that's the curly fur. And then if we can quickly go on to the nose, if there is time. So with the nose, I'll give you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of the nose and how best to do it. So again, I'm just going to erase the outlines with my pencil eraser. Now, noses tend to be a slightly pinky brown colour, so I'll be using a few pinks as well. And it's always best to keep looking back at your reference to see where it's slightly browner, slightly pinker. So what we'll do is, to begin with, we'll be using the lighter colours. So over on this side of the nose here, the sun is catching it, so it's slightly more pink. So I'll be using a light sienna to begin with, so a nice light colour. And as you can see, I sharpened it after sharpening a darker colour, but it's not affecting the pigment that's going down. It just made the side of the pigment slightly dirty, but that's fine. So just like this. Now, if you find that you enjoy using something like your Inktense and you do like a nice wash over your picture, so you want to cover it in Inktense, for example, to begin with, or maybe something like the watercolor palette and you're a bit more of a watercolor artist, you can still use these pencils over the top if you want to add that detail. So if you don't want to be putting down all these base colors with the pencils, you can do it with your watercolors and then go over the top with these pencils to give a little bit of definition. So next will be the dusky pink. I'm just going to start to darken for this nostril here. And again, using nice light pressure, working in circles like this, just where it looks slightly darker on the reference photo. Is everyone okay so far? Is there any questions or anything, or do you want to leave that to the end?
Jess, somebody just asked, they think they missed it, but which sharpener would you recommend for the drawing pencils, but also for Graphitint?
So for both of them, I would definitely use the Derwent twin hole eraser. This is a great sharpener. This is a really, really good sharpener, and you get nice sharp points on this too. But also I love to use this, the Super Point sharpener here, which is definitely my most used sharpener. It's incredibly good for getting a nice point to your pencils, and even with these softer pencils, which, for example, like this dusky pink here, I sharpened it, and you can focus, you can see it still gets a nice sharp point even though they're quite soft pencils themselves. So I definitely recommend that one.
Thank you. Oh, and also we forgot to mention earlier that the dog's called Riley.
Yes, he's called Riley. Yeah, very, very cute spaniel. So with this nostril here, I'll just keep check of time. So with the nostril here, it's also catching the sunlight slightly. So we want to put a little bit of yellowy hint to it. So I'm just going to use this sunflower. And again, very, very lightly, just work in circles. Just putting a hint of that yellow in because it is a very powerful colour. And it just gives a nice warmth to that nostril there. So to add a little bit of definition to the nostril itself now, we'll be using the chocolate. I can find it, there it is. So I'm just going to work my way around. So you can see like my pencil isn't too sharp really. You can get them a bit sharper if you want to, but you don't have to have it too sharp because we're going to be doing some nice blending motion here. So just going to work my way around the top edge of that nostril just lightly. I'm just going to start drawing it in along my outline a little bit just to give myself an idea of where I want to put this colour. So I've got the sort of nose here and then the darker area of the nostril here. So I'm just going to, again, in circular motions, work my way out from this point I've just drawn down here and work this way. So just very, very lightly, because again, this is quite a strong dark colour and we don't want to overwhelm that lighter area that we've put down. And then bringing it down here so I can put a little bit more pressure underneath the nose here where the nostril is darker and blacker. And then again, just in small circles, just bring it outwards like this. And then if you need to, and if you want to blend it together nicely, you can go back with your light sienna and just work your way over the top a little bit, and that will lighten that chocolate colour a little bit and just blend it nicely out, so you're not actually seeing any pencil strokes. It just seamlessly blends it and it looks super smooth. And you can do this wherever you need to. So once you put those darker colours down, you can just go back with your base colour and just blend it and smooth it out. So now we've got a little bit of shape to the nose there. We'll add in a little bit of an orange tint to it. So it's where the sun is catching the nose. So we'll go in with our apricot, so a nice bright orange, and just bring it across again nice and lightly like this, just to add a little bit more colour to the nose there. And then to add in a little bit of the sepia red, again just circular motions, just bringing it out from that nostril. So you've got a nice sort of dark area where this nostril is, and it brings it out to where it is lighter on the edge of the nose there. And you can bring that down here a little bit like this where the nostril is black, and then grabbing your ivory black, you can just lightly add in that darkest area of the nostril, so where it is truly black. And you can again keep squinting, keep checking it where it looks darkest on your reference like that, and keep it nice and blended. And again, if you feel you need to and you've gone too dark, you can go back in with your base colour and just go over that black a little bit just to make it slightly lighter and blend it in nicer. So we haven't got much time left, so I'm just going to show you a little trick on the top of the nose now to add in that detail. So we've got that side of the nose that's catching the light. So now we're going to be using colours on the top of the nose, which you would use on the rest of the nose here. So again, the nose is looking a bit of a pinky brown colour. So we'll begin with the light sienna, and I'm just going to cover the top of that nose with this light sienna like this. So I'm just going to do that top area over the top of these two nostrils. Again, I'm sectioning up the nose as well. I'm not doing the nose as a whole, so you don't need to feel too overwhelmed with it all. And then I'll be using my champagne. So I'm using both base colours together here because there's a little bit of brown on the nose, a little bit of pink. So I'm going to use the pink to begin with, and then that champagne just in circular motions from the top of the nostrils and bringing it up, but not quite all the way to the top because I want some of that pink to be showing through. And then working up our spectrum of brown, we'll be using warm earth. So just circular motions of warm earth over the top of the nostrils, leaving a little bit of a gap here where the light is catching the edge of this nostril. Just nice circular motions, bringing it all the way up like that. Now you might see it looks slightly darker here where I'm putting it down, and that's because I'm going over where I've put the base colour down. Now if you do that, it's absolutely fine because you can just go back over with your base colour and it will just lighten it up like that. And then keeping going with the darker colours, so we'll use the woodland now. So just keep checking where it looks slightly darker and slightly lighter. So I'm bringing up this woodland, but there's a slight highlight here on the nose. So you can either skip that part and bring that woodland above it, or you can completely cover it in like this and just leaving it pink at the very top of the nose there. And then use your Chinese white and just go over the top of it. And that just starts to lighten those browns and gives that little bit of a highlight to the nose like that. And then you can just keep going backwards and forwards with those two colours as much as you need to. But this white is brilliant because you can use it over any colour. It's definitely been a lifesaver at times, I can tell you. So you've got sort of those base colours down. I'm just going to blend that a little bit more into that area. Now you want to add in a little bit of detail to the top of this nose because dog noses have got those little sort of circles and nooks in them. So to do this, we'll use our chocolate pencil, chocolate colour. And all you need to do now is just draw in some curved lines. So I'm literally, I'll show you up here, I'm just doing curved lines like this all over the nose.
Jess,
you can join them. Yeah.
Jess, sorry to interrupt you. I've just got a question from somebody saying,
Sure.
do you find that this is the best white for highlighting over other mediums too?
Yes, this is the white I always use for like any medium basically. I think it's definitely the one I found for like any pencil that it works the best for that, and I'd recommend it to all my students as well when I do workshops.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to keep going and add in some curves just to add in a bit of detail on that nose. And then those colours that we've used on the top of the nose here, you can then start to bring them down. So keep looking to where it looks slightly pink or slightly more brown. And then you can just work your way down the nose and fill it in. So it just starts to look a bit like that. So got a little bit of definition on that nose now. And I think that might be about time. I don't want to get in trouble by going over, but
that is fantastic. Thank you so much. Wow, that eye has just taken my attention the whole time. I cannot stop looking at it. I can't believe how quickly Riley has come to life here as well in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Right, lots of love as well coming through for you on the chat. Just some of the quick messages I just saw. Very calming and inspiring. Thank you so much, Jess. And I would agree to that. A very calm, lovely workshop to go through there with loads of tips and techniques. I can't wait. So just don't forget, anybody, that if there's anything you've missed, then we're going to pop this up on YouTube, and we will include a link as well to the reference photos and image for you, so you can have a look at those and grab them in your own time. And if there are any pictures, anything that anybody does want to share, then please hashtag Cult Pens Community, pop it up, and we would love to see what you've done, and we'll have a look. And thank you again, Jess, so much for joining us and for sharing your beautiful work.
That's okay, no problem. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning as well, so I'll just add if that's all right. So with the drawing pencil tin, so I designed it as being said, but if anybody is interested in looking at my process on how I designed the tin and created the actual piece for the tin, I did a whole video of the process from start to finish, which took a good few months to do up on my YouTube channel if anyone's interested in going to look at that. And my YouTube, if you go to youtube.com/@jess.pritchard, then you'll come across that video on there.
Fabulous, thank you. We'll make sure we link that as well in this when we pop this up as well, so that everybody will be able to find that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much, Jess. We've already been asked if you're going to do another one, so I think I'll need to talk to the team at Colt tomorrow and see what we can sort out. But yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. I'm glad everyone's enjoyed it.